Hello, this is the interview of Shreyas Suvarna from Digantara for our experiential learning project for the Project Management Global Elective. And I am Siddharth Joshi from Biotechnology Department.
I am Varsha Gururaj from the chemical department.
And I am Navanika J Reddy, and I'm from computer science.
And I'm Rakshan Kulkarni from Electronics and Instrumentation Department.
So we'll start off with our interview with Shreyas, or rather a conversation with Shreyas on project management and its real life applications in his field. Before we start off, I would like to introduce Shreyas to all of you. So Shreyas is presently a project manager at Digantara, and Digantara is a space tech startup that has been co-founded by one of our RVC alumnus, Tanveer Ahmed, and it's tackling a very unique problem. So as their saying goes, they don't want to solve problems of today, but rather they want to develop solutions for problems of tomorrow. And in the space technology field, space debris is an emerging and huge problem that they're trying to solve. So Digantara basically works in space situational awareness. They are developing both ground and space infrastructure, which includes telescopes and satellites, to basically create a Google map of sorts of space. And they will be selling this information to other potential clients, such as other satellite companies, satellite insurance companies, etc. So that is a brief about what Digantara does. And about Shreyas, Shreyas is also an alumnus of RVC. He graduated in 2020 from the aerospace department. And while he was at RV, he was one of the project management team members at Team Antariksh. So, welcome Shreyas to this meeting, and thank you so much for taking your time out for us. And
Hi.
so Shreyas's journey in Digantara started off as a mechanical design intern, and then he slowly shifted to mission design, which was more of a systems approach compared to the technical approach. And now he has moved into the project management role. And Shreyas enjoys the work culture in startups. He likes the new processes and new ideas that are required to drive startups to their early success. And he's one of the key players who is driving Digantara into their success rate. So let's begin with our questions. So, right. So, Shreyas, let me ask you to begin with, and all of us are in fourth year setting for placements. So, basically, what did you do to get where you are in your company? Like, how did you start? Can you please just go over that?
Okay. I would say mine was more of an opportunity that presented itself to me. I basically, during my final year in 8th semester, my major project was an internship-based project where I worked in Bell Textron on structural aspects. And when like after that, though I didn't get a permanent placement offer at Bell, at that time, Digantara was still starting out, and Tanveer approached us on a potential opportunity as a part of the starting and to be part of the core founding team of Digantara. And it just sounded right. So I just took it, and that's how I started out my initial journey at Digantara. But when we were at a transitional phase where we were shifting to the SSA and space debris as a core focus of our company, I was given an option to choose between the mission design aspect, where I would be overlooking towards designing and analyzing the overall mission parameters of the first satellite mission, which is due to launch in sometime this year. And for which, as a matter of fact, I am here at UK for integration activity of the satellite, and we are currently completing one of our test campaigns, which is going good, as a matter of fact. So I was given that opportunity to choose between mission design as well as the SSA software development, and I took mission design because that was something that I was familiar with, so to say, because as a part of the student satellite team at Antariksh, we were there already understanding more about the satellite tech and how these things evolve over the course of the entire project. And it seemed familiar, but again unfamiliar, because as a student team you are limited to certain responsibilities, and the course of domain what you're interacting is way different from what you are expecting in a startup and a corporate world. And it seemed just right that since I have already done something on this, I wanted to dig deep and learn more about this aspect. So I took mission design, and that basically started out my journey as a from systems engineer to mission design, and then now to the current project management that I'm currently dealing here in Digantara.
Okay, that's very interesting. So you've taken a lot of turns to get where you are. So now, dealing with the actual project management. So when you say project at your company, how do you exactly define a project? What constitutes a project at your company right now?
Okay. This would be a very broad aspect to answer, because from my own experience and what I have learned so far, being as part of company, looking at other projects that we deal outside the company and everything, uh, every project requires you to have a clear definition at the beginning on what you want to achieve. And if you're not clear on that definition, there is always this threat of expansion of uncontrolled expansion of scope of the project, or you not meeting the intent that you set out for meeting or when you're making that particular project in mind. So at our stage, we can at Digantara, what we are looking at is more towards the different aspects of project development, and it varies from who do you ask or who do you speak at different levels of the personnel or the team that we have here. If you ask anyone who's on the core software working on or core hardware working on project development, for them their project would be like to achieve a certain performance metric, or meet or build a sensor that meets the company's requirement as such. But as you move higher, the vision of that product changes from a very technical oriented goals to a much larger business goals. And that transition is necessary for all companies. All of them have it, because that is what drives the company to make its meet its business challenges, revenues, and get a good market share. And for me, when you ask me what a project is to ensure that we define and meet and set a certain business goals and technical goals to achieve, so that we can meet a progress for like we can achieve a significant progress of what the company's vision is in terms of what we want to solve, in terms of the goals that we have set up for ourselves to achieve. And defining this becomes your first or primary objective when you're starting out as a project, because the current project what we are looking at, Digantara itself becomes like an entire huge project of its own, where we are trying to build an extensive solution infrastructure, sensor infrastructure, and downstream analytics to help people with uh, different aspects and challenges that they face as a satellite operator or as a government or commercial agencies when we are looking towards dependencies on space tech. And to ensure this, these huge projects or company-wide projects will be broken down into different aspects, and each team or department in company gets their own. The at what we are setting out as project management team is to ensure that nobody is losing track of the focus what we set out to build, and ensuring that you are meeting the necessary maturity of technology, meeting the timelines and budget constraints, and not overshooting or oversolving a problem that you are trying to you are set out to solve, as a matter of fact. So when you say that we have to define what a project is, it varies from case by case basis. But in most of the situation, what would be appropriate is to set out what is the exact defined goals in terms of business and technological perspective that you would like to solve, and what is the ultimate aim that you want to achieve out of this exercise. and defining that becomes the project. Once you have that definition, it is more or less coordinating with different aspects of team challenges, such as risk mitigation, the hardware and unexpected challenges that might come up in middle, solving them and handling them and tracking this progress and improving the methodology and implementations over time. So for any project, I would say the crucial aspect would be to define what you are set out to achieve in terms of both business and technical goals.
Okay.
And that becomes the core of the project.
Okay. So that was a very comprehensive answer on how you go about defining your project. So now, project apart, so what does a day look like when you go to work at your workplace, for you especially?
Okay, that is a very broad question. So it depends. So most of the time, how it starts out is you come up to the office, you are like, there will be things that you want to get yourself updated from what has happened in the previous day, which and over the course of the previous week, for example, and basically get yourself up to date on where do you stand and what is the progress on different aspects of the uh, teams or projects that are currently on your table. And once you have that, you have you primarily it will start on identifying existing or potential problems that might come up, then assigning or coordinating with somebody on the team who's handling that aspect of technology or that aspect of business goals to ensure that appropriate solution is being generated for it. And sometimes this will be resolved very quickly, sometimes it might take some more time, but you have to be prepared for both contingencies to ensure that you're not going to cause a significant delay in the progress of the entire goal. And the other aspect would come up in which is crucial is to discuss these potential possibilities and map their impact on your timelines, your cost, your budget, and if it does, what is the effect that we are looking towards that as an impact on the success of the mission or success of that particular project goals. And once you have this, if your dependencies internal, you coordinate with your internal teams. If your dependencies is external, you have to speak with your external vendors on how you're going to help mitigate all this. And most of the time it becomes a constant back and forth on monitoring progress, and it is quite easy to get lost in this middle of trying to get update on all these things. But it is necessary, and I've learned it the hard way over course of time, that you absolutely have to have understanding on where do you stand and how things are going to be impacted at all times. Because if you lose track of one thing, things are going to spiral out of control very quickly if a lot of people are coordinating on same thing and it does not achieve. So a typical day for me would be where I get in, catch up on what has happened so far, and ensure that nothing is missed. If everything is there, then I coordinate with external vendors, internal teams on where things are happening or where what problems can be solved. Once that is there, it is more of like appropriate track of what is happening, coordinate with vendors for procurement, for development, and other aspects. Then of course, by this, most of your day would be spent depending upon the complexity of task. But if I usually have time, I would like to dabble myself once in a while on mission design aspects, because keeping yourself updated in where the current team stands would help you understand the problem better. And it's not a good practice, at least from my experience, to completely detach yourself of from a particular technology group. Even though we are confident that they'll achieve the solution for us, it is also vital and necessary for us to understand what is happening, because there are instances where they might have solved an issue already, but we do not understand enough of it to make sure that it has been solved or understand whether a problem has been solved. So ensuring that I am understanding what is happening across the board and ensuring uh, all the tasks are as per the timeline, you'll reach the end of the day before you even know it. So that's how a typical day goes. but there are exceptions. There will be times where everything will be going smoothly and you expect no problems, and suddenly there will be new other challenges coming in and you have to focus on getting those things resolved as well. So it's more or less to be prepared for anything and everything that can happen, and trusting that process will take care, because that's what you are effectively depending on your team for. And and it usually resolves on its own. But to ensuring that you apply and ask for the right measures to be taken at the right time is the main crucial part of this whole process as a project manager. Because if you this is something that I read in a article when I was initially starting out my research on the project management aspect. A right decision taken at wrong time or at a delayed time frame is far worse than making a wrong decision at a very early stage where you still have the opportunity to correct it over time. So it is absolutely critical to ensure that you are understanding on where the team stands and where the technology stands and how it impacts your goal, so that you don't miss out on the right opportunity window to take the right calls to make a decision. And your day, most of the day progresses in getting yourself back on top on the progresses that has happened, and ensuring that whatever risks or challenges that come up are we are ready to tackle, or appropriate person has been delegated to resolve that.
Yeah, that makes, yeah, I think that covers a very broad aspect of the kind of work you do. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I think Varsha has the next question for you.
So you spoke about the importance of having like timely decisions and all of that, and all of them obviously come with the project lifeline. So what do you think is the most challenging time stamp of a project?
Okay. Uh, this varies from project to project. For essentially, there are some set methodologies that you can follow. For example, there is the waterfall approach. Then you have the agile approach, where you are constantly running in loops to tackle a different problem or achieve problem and improve it over time, but also ensuring that you are getting a consistent product development in case of softwares. But in some cases, in usually in most of the projects where in particularly in space sector, you are looking at often significant overlap between a hardware and software developments. And while agile methodologies are very commonly implemented and successfully tried for software development aspects and different project a part of it, the hardware development, it's more of an waterfall approach, where you have to do an extensive design study in the beginning. Once you review it and complete it and ensure that everything is met on timeline for your, say, preliminary design reviews or critical design reviews, which are your major milestone for any standard space project. If you take, once you hit a milestone, it your our role as a project managers become more and more crucial, because right now you are trying to accumulate large amount of technical and various data that is going to impact on how the next phase of development is going to happen. And that means every change of phase between a project is basically divided into multiple phases. You'll have and depending upon what sort of project we are looking at, the phases are going to be obviously different. And to ensure or to mark a completion of phase, you have to be absolutely sure that there is not any critical bottlenecks that are going to come up in the next phase because you have not covered a particular aspect here. And that will be the most challenging phase of any project that we take. It doesn't matter if it is software, hardware, or we are looking at complete system levels. Because if you miss a particular requirement, or if you have underestimated a certain requirement at very initial stage of the project, it is going to come back as a major or critical bottleneck at later stages. So reviews are something that is very crucial and an absolute necessity and tool to ensure that we have not missed anything. And that is where the main challenge lies often, because there will be so much amount of overwhelming details, and if you're not familiar with a particular field, or if you're not uh, completely able to grasp the overall picture, it is very easy to lose sight of anything or a small thing during that phase. So for us, over the course of project development, that will be the most tense period over time, where we would be sitting for uh, days or sometimes the entire week discussing to ensure that we are not supposed to miss anything crucial, because any changes that you miss here is going to impact on your final schedule. At this stage, it might not be a very extensive change, but when your project is at 80 or 70% completion and you want to change some minor aspect of requirement, the cascading effect of it is very significant. And defining that becomes your major uh, challenge at that aspect, so to say. I hope I have answered your question on this.
Yeah. So you mentioned all the challenges that come with respect to the project. What are the little things that you do to ensure that they d- they don't occur essentially? Like how do you deal with of
Okay.
this?
That's a good question. I mean, there are things that we do to avoid such changes or aspects, but it is not something that we can 100% eliminate all the time. So it is never it is possible. It is not an impossible goal to achieve, but it is very difficult to do so. And oftentimes you miss a few of the smaller conveniences that would be very helpful in the future stages. But that does not mean that we have to be discouraged that we have not covered everything at a certain stage. And to ensure everything is falling or going to happen, or to avoid such scenarios, first thing that we need to have at project management level would be to have a complete visualization of how we are envisioning the product. And only when you have this will you be able to make, like, you start from a high level and start breaking it down to much greater detail, to ensure that you're covering all necessary critical aspects and you're not going to miss any of them. Because there are other additional aspects, features that are good to have, that will be able to add more conveniently. But if you miss out on critical nature, for example, it would be something, it can be as something similar as what is the type of communication protocol you're going to implement, or what is the type of redundancies that we are looking at on this aspect. Or if we are looking at mechanical aspects, it would be on whether or not your design is capable of sustaining a particular launch load or launch condition that we are looking at. Or it might be uh, tolerances and integration constraints between these systems when they all come together. So these things are, at that stage, would look as a crucial input that you absolutely have to make sure. Because if everything else is fine, if you have taken care of all small final details, but when they add in together, if they don't build the product that you envision, then it becomes necessary for you to either stop that, take a call on reworking the entire project, or have to make an expensive modification to ensure that you are meeting timeline at minimal or uh, budget constraints, or on different aspects on where or what you consider crucial at a time. So to ensure that you are not missing out anything, we start out with usually a breakdown, where we start with what is the key features that we are looking at, what is the key performance parameters. Then, to achieve that key performance parameter, what are the other critical parameters that will be nested. And then we break it down to what is the good to have features that will make things simple down the line for us to test or integrate, or different aspects of it. And that's how a top down approach we have to break down, and you have to do this at a very early stage of project so that it will be helpful for your major milestone or change of these project phases to make sure that you're not missing any of these critical details. And over time you'll also learn few things and limitations of the design that we are looking at, and that is where we'll start on adding uh, further into these charts, and ensuring that they are still within the scope of project becomes the next crucial step that you would have to take to ensure not such errors don't happen over time.
Okay. That's a nice answer.
Huh.
So I have a question. So I think we can agree that a good communication between the team is very essential. So how do you ensure good communication amongst your team? And do you implement any kind of team building activities as such?
Yes. First of all, you can tackle the communication through multiple ways. One is to have sufficient rapport with the team members on different aspects, because if you are open enough to communicate of any problem that can potentially hinder or look at the project or affect the project timeline or development or certain project requirement, then if you are in a good rapport with the team members, they'll be able to update you immediately on time, and based on the nature and priority of it, you can implement appropriate risk management measures. The other aspect is to have this is something that we have tried so far and it works for a small team. It is to have like a regular catch up meetings where on what is the progress you have done, say for the week or for past 2 weeks, on where the product stands, and to have an open approach to approach anybody who's essentially handling different aspects of it on anything, so that you can openly communicate to them and get where do we stand, or what is the current holdup or a bottleneck that we are looking. And to ensure that that is happening, it is absolutely necessary for you to have good relationship with your team members, and only when you have it will we be able to do it. But this is for an internal team. The other aspect is to document these processes, the development that is happening over time, so that it is not it does not result in any miscommunication or misunderstanding over time. Because we might have agreed upon a certain feature to be implemented at some X week of a month, and over the time you it might have slipped your mind or your teammates mind because of other critical parameters coming up. It is absolutely necessary to implement a common workboard or a Trello or any project management aspect tool that will help you keep track of what tasks have been assigned to who and where it stands. Because if you don't keep it, it is easier to lose track of it in the grand scheme of things in project. And this applies same for the external vendors, and depending upon vendors they may have different approaches on how they tackle this communication issue. Some have like a weekly review meetings, some prefer to uh, do an extensive update once they have reached a major milestone. And depending upon the necessity and crucial criticality of what aspect they are working on, you might prefer to change their preferred mode of communication to something more convenient. You can get in touch with email, WhatsApp, call, any way that you can get a proper update and get have an understanding of where the development stands would be helpful. And to do this, main crucial necessity lies is to have an open channel and good amount of vendor relationship or bit, interpersonal relationships with people who you work with, so that you are not missing out on, or you are not hesitant, or they are not hesitant to approach you for any problems. So that is the baseline for establishing, I would say, a good communication with the team.
Okay. So my question for you is that since you work with a lot of people under your since you're a project manager, how do you conduct performance evaluations and how do you convey your criticism constructively and professionally to the people?
Okay, so there are different aspects to this. I mean, it depends, or the approach varies from person to person in this case. And for example, usually yeah, it has been quite a thing in our company that if we want to give such a feedback of sorts, we just go on a walk, speak about how the things have progressed on a particular aspect. And that helps because if you are doing it in a controlled environment or inside a conference room, that kind of builds up that tension or an aspect. So there are situations where such a formal feedback would be required, and it will be given in that way. But if it is of a general feedback to a team member or regarding a particular development or a progress, if that you are not satisfied with, that you hope to change, what we do is we just go on a long walk and discuss on why that problem occurred in first place and what they feel or what we feel or things that could have been changed, so that we try to broaden the perspective and try to tackle this issue from the core. Because at this it is necessary that there is always a learning opportunity for everyone when a particular situation develops either out of control or uh, things happen that does not go in the way that you intend to. And going on a long walk essentially cools off your mind, gets you back to a calm state where you can look at the problem more objectively and assess it for potential problems or things that you could have targeted it better and try to resolve that problem in future. This is something that it has worked previously for us and something that I would be willing to extend until it keeps on working. But if a formal feedback session is necessary, then we would be doing it that way. And it depends upon the situation where we are targeting. So, if, based on how the situation calls, this would be the approach that we would usually take, either one of it.
So, how do you reflect on your career as a project manager so far? If you had to go back in time and give an advice to yourself, what would it be?
That project management is not as simple as it seems. So, there are things that I would certainly like to improve from what, or if I had that opportunity to go back in past and correct few things. There are things that I would like to improve, but the whole essential phase of what I have understood so far as my progress in the project management is we cannot depend on how the things are have went in the past and what has been successful or what has resulted in a failure as the correct baseline for every situation that we are going to be in. Because there are learnings that you can take from a particular situation that you have faced and you have tackled it successfully or you did not manage to tackle it successfully. But to ensure that you can understand and reflect why that situation happened in first place, what are the parameters or who and what aspect of the communication loop or what aspect of the development loop we uh, where that thing started to go out of control. You have to understand these and to ensure that such a situation will not come up in future would be a crucial aspect. And if I have to give myself an advice on, if I have to go back and give myself an advice on the project manager aspect, I still don't think I am capable of giving anything back that would be vital or I would say change, because the things that I have learned over the course helps me shape what I am. And there is no opportunity or you're not supposed to have a feeling or that yes, I want to go back and give myself this advice, because while it is necessary, it is not a situation that you would like to be in. So the aspect is when you're learning something, we have to look forward and understand why a problem comes in. And once, if you feel even in future when you are dealing with a different project that a situation is going in a very similar direction, then you would have to actively start resolving the solutions that you have. There are new things to learn every day, and you have to be very decisive. So there isn't any advice that I can give myself clearly if I can go back in time, because that is not something that I've given thought of. But there are things that I would like at this present moment to not repeat, or to avoid such a future scenarios, or a potential risk for the project or for the goals that we are trying to achieve. And that is something that I'm happy to take away from any previous incident that happens. And if you ask me, I'm very bad at giving advices to people. So I tend not to think of giving it as an advice, but rather than, if a problem has occurred, why and how we can avoid it in the future, or how we can resolve it if we end up in such a situation, is what I would like to think myself for the future. Because it's better to be prepared, and over the course of time we learn things. And when we learn things, our main agenda is to not repeat such same mistakes again in the future.
So, thank you. That was a beautiful answer. So, I think we have reached the end of the conversation, and I would like to thank you for spending time with us on this session, taking time out from your busy schedule, and giving us insights into the world of project management. I'm sure in the future, a few years down the line, all of us will be in a managerial position in our own company. And these points that you have mentioned is really going to help us. And even now, as freshers, when we get into the industry, I feel like having the big picture on how an entire project is, flow happens is going to help us during our day-to-day work as well. So I would like to thank you for this wonderful session. That's it from my side.
Yeah. Okay, but a last thing that I would like you guys to know is that
Yeah.
the environment in universities and colleges and that in a company are going to be vastly different. And
Right.
the amount of learning opportunities what you get at college and the amount of learning opportunities at what you get in corporate are going to be at different level, primarily because at universities there are consequences that are going to be only reflecting on your mark sheets, but here the causes are going to be very more realistic and the consequences are going to be much harsher. So as much as you can gather over the process and learn from the mistakes or experiences of your peers and seniors, take it as much as possible. And but it is not going to be an absolute truth or guideline, or the box that you have to settle in, because you are going to develop as your own unique style of management or your unique careers that you're going to pursue. And the main aspect I would say is to learn from everything that you can get, because only when you learn is you'll try to understand who or what you can implement that stands out to your own and becomes a part of who you are. So that would be, I would say, an advice that I can give for you. And yeah, thank you for having me, and it was a wonderful experience so far.
Thank you.
Thank you so